Hey everyone, I don't know if I'm gonna upload this or keep it, but this little thing was a recording I did for the panel I did at ALA 2024, the 80s J-pop idol one. And basically this is a reading of the panel that I did for timing purposes because I debated a lot whether the panel was too long or short, and I figured since I kind of screwed up, I meant to record the panel, screen record it and audio record it, and the audio recording just went weird and the screen recording didn't work. So I guess we'll upload this to see how it goes. More than likely all the music at some point will be claimed and I might have to remove some of it. So when we do these panels live, usually I talk over some parts of the music, and I'm not going to do that here, not only because I don't know how the audio levels will work, but more importantly because I think that I think that the music segment might eventually get cut out. So yeah, let's flash backwards to about a month ago when I recorded the rest of it. Hey everyone, this is the J-pop idol panel. Usually when I start these panels, I like to have a track slide. The idea is if people are walking by in the hallway or whatnot, they might hear music and walk in. It's happened a lot, so especially in that weird awkward time when you're setting up or tearing down. And I find that if you hook people in early, they'll stay. And I think that's like typical for anything. But anyways, let's get into this. Real fast, there's a typo on the Kilala to Ulala page. Oops. But I wasn't about to redo the whole video for that. And let's just get into it. I guess we'll play it. And usually when we do the panels live, I'll either myself or someone will be talking over the music here and there. But I'm not going to do that here because I'm afraid that the music might be claimed eventually. But let's do it.
本当の愛は何色ですか愛しき造形の大人になる大人になるつまずきでしょうか恋はどうか恋はどうかさよなら月の私を 仲間に加わったテーブルを挟んであなたを熱く見た私は待つわいつまでも待つわたとえあなたが振り向いてくれなくてもでも待つわ他の誰かにあなたが振られる日まで 伝わ
Okay, hopefully everyone is here for J. I say it like I'm like doing the actual panel, but I am timing this, so I guess I have to do it that way. J-pop idols of the 1980s, the golden age of Showa era pop. I'm Manuel, the leader of A to J Connections, and the J-pop historian. I've been doing panels on music for almost 10 years now. There's probably been about well, we've done over 150 panels A to J Connections has, and I think about 80 to 100 of those are on music, and I've been on all the music ones as far as I can remember right now. Follow me at anything Elevic_222 or Elevic222, depending on what it is. And yeah, visit the website, check us out on Facebook and Twitter. If you check out the website, I have almost all the recent music panels there in slide form, including this one. So check it out. And I was toying about the idea of uploading this to YouTube, so maybe check out YouTube. I'm saying this as if even if this doesn't get to YouTube, I guess you'll never know. And if you're watching it, it made it to YouTube, so whatever. Anyways, let's get into what this panel is. Well, idols have definitely existed in Japan, long before the 80s, but this panel is going to examine that period, aka the idol boom, the golden age of idols. It has been called the silver age to some degree because there technically is an era before this, but we'll get to that. And yeah, a lot of this panel is going to be discussing various individual idols, groups, but there'll be a few other things along the way, including maybe some of my controversial ideas, because I think, as I've been a fan of idols for a while, I like to I develop my own opinions on things. Fun fact: the book right there, pictured, is Islands of 8 Million Smiles. That book, for the longest time, was considered the scholarly take on idol fandom, research, I mean. And a lot of things that we take for granted, that we know as, the idol timeline, the idol ice age, a lot of it came from this book, or at the very least, this was the book that talked about it in English. And similar to how I think things like video game history come from too few sources, I think idol history has come from too few sources as well. So wait for some of my things on that. And honestly, if you're watching this on YouTube, this is kind of almost just me recording a lecture at this point, because it's a different vibe when I do these panels in person. I'm trying to keep people I'm not trying to keep people interested here, but I'm trying to keep people engaged. People will ask questions. I'll throw things at people. I'll see somebody responding to something, well in the audience, so I'll talk more about it, or I'll move faster when I realize that no one's really hearing what I'm saying. So this is a bit different. So yeah. Anyways, I will be moving fast. I'm going to try to keep this to the speed that I do it in the panels. So yeah, just keep up. If you want to look at the slides later on, like I said, they are on the A to J Connections website. And if this makes it to YouTube, it'll be in the description, like these particular slides. And yeah, lastly, this doesn't cover Johnny's idols. There was a version of this panel where I did include Johnny's, but it turned out this panel was getting way too long, which is the reason why I'm recording this, because I'm is this too long? But they were very instrumental in the idol boom. I will maybe mention them casually here and there, but there's no slides about them. And I am considering doing an entire panel on Johnny's idols in the future. And yeah, let's get into it. So setting the stage. So nothing exists in a vacuum, and idols existed well throughout the Showa period. The Showa period, for those who don't know, is a period that a lot of people consider the 80s idols Showa era idols, and that's correct, because the Showa period didn't end until 1989, so it fits in. But what most people don't really factor in is that the Showa period is pretty much everything post-war, World War II. So it's a long period. So it's kind of unfair just to call that all, to lump everything in together. But for the purposes of our discussion, we're going to take a look at Momoe Yamaguchi, arguably the first truly successful idol, and her career lasted from 1972 to 1980. And as you might tell by that year, is that it closed out the 70s. And honestly, that wasn't that was kind of more by chance, even though it was planned she was going to get married and retire. But she could have closed it out in 1978, 1981. It just was perfect that it was 1980. Also, because of that, and because we had idols like Seiko Matsuda who debuted as she was going through her retirement, there was a very much like a passing of the torch, so to speak. But yeah, the 70s, Pink Lady, and I guess Candies too. I was saying Candies, but Pink Lady topped the charts. Momo Yamaguchi topped the charts. So these are like our proto idols, so to speak. And once again, if we're going to like some other timeline versions, some people consider this the silver age of idols. But it's just worth keeping this all in mind, because when we get idols that pop up in the 80s, it's not like this was a new thing and they appeared. It was more like the continuation. And the song we're going to be looking at from Momo Yamaguchi is Yokosuka Story. This was her 18th single, released in June 1976. It hit number 1 weekly and 8 yearly. And this is her best known song. It's probably best known because there's a lot of parody versions that are used in ad campaigns. And yeah, we'll check it out. Now, also, the clip we're going to watch is from her farewell like appearance on a music show. I forget which one this is, but probably You're on a Hit Studio or something. But yeah, this is that.
坂道駆け上ったら今も海が見えるでしょうかここは横須賀
And moving on to probably like, an idol that everyone expects to see in this one, it's Seiko Matsuda, the Eternal Idol. But yeah, she's often dubbed the Eternal Idol due to her long-spanning career, and also not just her long-spanning career, but the fact that throughout her career, she still kind of maintained the idol image, which is strange because she actually got married kind of early on, like in 1985. And as fans of idols might know, that's usually a death sentence for your career. But anyway. She debuted with Harashi no Kisetsu in 1980. And that was following 1978 Miss 17 contest win. You'll learn that a lot of idols win a contest. Usually it's like modeling, or sometimes it's an idol contest. But that's a very common thing. But yeah, she had several hits throughout the 80s. Her third, Kazewa Akihiro, that was her first number one hit, and it kicked off a huge string of number one hits. That set a record in Japan for like the most consecutive number one hits, and it wasn't broken until a certain rock band named Bees broke in the year 2000, and they've actually shattered that record. If you want to know more about Bees, I don't think I have it recorded, but I do talk about them. I have a 90s and 2000s decade panel, but I talk about them a lot in the 90s one. Anyways. But yeah, by the mid 80s, she had a couple English language releases. These eventually culminated in 1990. She had an album called Seiko. And what I find funny is, like I mentioned, that she married in 1985. I didn't actually know that because because I remember when I was first learning about Seiko, the album, that was one of my first J-pop CDs. I bought it like at a library book sale. I was looking into it. There's all these rumors about like her dating other celebrities, and then when I found out she was married since 1985, I'm like, whoa. That's odd, and we'll talk more about that in a minute, but I don't want to focus too much on scandals here, at least not yet. Anyways, speaking of which, 1985, she married her first husband, Masaki Kanda. Is she married again? I don't know if I want my first husband. Maybe she's married again. I don't have the notes here. But anyways, Masaki Kanda, that's also who she had a daughter with, who unfortunately passed away. But also worth noting, which I think is always, I would like to bring up whenever I talk about Seiko Matsuda, is that the song Kimono Beat from 1987 album Strawberry Time, it was used in the episode of King of the Hill where like they go to Japan. But yeah, so some of you might have heard that song, but that's not exactly a hit. It's an album track. But yeah, even though she was the most commercially successful idol of all time, and she's kind of considered the 80s idol. It's funny because she's not like the biggest one of the 80s, and we're going to talk about that in a second and why I think that is. But the easy answer, just cut to the chase about why I think that is because she kept going. It's like, and she kept that image up. And so yeah, a little bit different. Unlike talking about one specific song, I'm gonna show you some a bunch together. Always song show that's a cool little clip I got, like where she's getting off an airplane and she's like, just they just ambush her. She starts singing right away. And if you want to hear like a bit of fan chants, like a lot of Seiko clips have that. Some of the clips we'll have in this panel will have that as well, like Worage. Kazuo Akihiro has like what I can only assume are some people teaching the audience at home how to do the chants and the calls and whatnot. So yeah, and fun fact, Shiroi Parasol is actually my favorite Seiko Matsuda song. So yeah.
私の恋は南の風に乗って走るわ青い風引いて走れあの島へ Oh, we'll kiss my 抱きしめて Let's go, let's go あなたの腕の中で旅をする Oh, we'll kiss my 受け止めて Let's go, let's go 柔らかなその愛で 膝に白いパラソル答えは風の中であなたを知りたい愛の予感
But yeah, and we'll bring her up a bit more later on. So, anyways, I wanted to break this up and talk about the Kadokawa Sannen Musume, mainly because there's a whole concept known as media mix. Basically, this is the idea. Well, in this case, the idol, but like anything, will serve as just one unit within a bigger product vision, like a product rollout, so to speak. So yeah, and you'll notice that a lot of the idols we talk about today, they get involved with they're also actors. They also have a lot of tie-in things. Almost every song we're going to talk about from here on out, and even some of the songs we already mentioned, were like commercial songs for like candy or makeup or whatnot. And yeah, honestly, that's a whole thing we can talk about, beyond the scope of the panel, of why that is. Usually in places like, not in Japan, you wouldn't, like, a song that's used in a commercial typically doesn't become a huge hit. Like, yeah, everyone knows it, but it's not like gonna top the charts and sell millions of copies. But that's the way things work in Japan. And also, what's also really important is that I like to argue that that's pretty much why idols exist in the first place. Like, sure, you have a lot of artists who are like in it for the love of music, even the producers and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, a lot of them are just there to like push the products they're attached to, or push the agency they're attached to, or their affiliates. And nothing's wrong with that. And let's be honest here, we're talking about idols here, so they're going to be a bit manufactured anyway. So calling them things like industry plants isn't exactly incorrect. So yeah. Anyways, we're getting a bit ahead of ourselves. Let's just keep moving on about the Sannen Musume. The first one of the Sannen Musume, Hiroko Yakushimaru. She debuted as an actor. There was a film audition with Haruki Kadokawa in 1978. Eventually, after a few other roles, she was chosen to star in the Yakuza satire movie Sailor Fuku Tokikanjo in 1981. She also performed the theme song. That movie's amazing. Check it out. I think as of now, you can watch it like free on YouTube. Well, like, I'm not sure how legal the upload is, but you can watch it free on YouTube. But the song's amazing. The movie's amazing. But yeah, she continued both those parts of her careers. She starred and provided the theme songs for Tante Monogatari, which is also known as Detective Story, and she also did the. I wish I put what movie that was. She also had a movie. I mean, I think the movie might be called Main Theme, but the song's called Main Theme, and I just love that when someone's hit single is called Main Theme. It just sounds really boring. And as you can tell, a lot of them are just based off the movies, anyways. But yeah, she left Kadokawa and became an independent, actress in 1985. Um, she kind of slowed down her music releases after that because I think part of the reason Kadokawa had her doing them in the first place was just to promote the movies that they were in. In 1991, she married Anzen Shitai vocalist Koichi Tamaki. Um, yeah, she pretty much retired throughout all the 90s. They divorced in 1998, and she kind of went back into both music and acting. But now she's more active, I think, as an actress. But yeah, we're going to hear her song, Seilofuku to Kikanju. And this is her debut single. It released in November 1981, and it was the theme of the movie of the same name. It hit number 1 weekly, and it was number 2 on the yearly charts. It was a huge hit. I think this is worth noting that it was originally recorded, it was released a few weeks before as Yume no Tochu, with slightly different lyrics, and that's actually more in line with the lyrics themselves. And it was written by it was originally written for Takao Kisuo, who I believe was one of the male leads in the movie. But anyways, so yeah, there's 2 versions of the song, and that version was kind of a hit, but her version is a much bigger hit. But yeah, it's just one of those things. Like I said, it's just one of those wild things that happens in pop scenes. You release two singles, basically the same song twice, and the second one's a hit. 'And the second member of the Kadokawa San and Musume is Tomoyo Harada. Sorry, I'm mispronouncing all my pronunciations. And see, part of this is the reason why I'm like, am I going to put this on YouTube? Because I feel like I want to go back and record these things. But this is a long panel, and I'm not going to do takes. So just roast me in the comments if I put it on YouTube. I don't care. Tomoyo Harada. She applied and passed the Kadokawa audition at just 14. She had her acting debut in the TV drama version of Seilofuku to Kanju, which is the one we just saw. Well, not the one we just saw, but the theme song we just saw for the movie. She was in the TV show, the drama. Fun fact: there's a more recent drama that came out in the 2000s, like the first half of the 2000s. I mean, this be like 2006 or 7. It's a great drama as well. I love it. And speaking of which, the song gets re-recorded a lot. Seilofuku Toki Kanju, whenever they do a new one. But Tomoyo Harada made her film debut the following year with Tokiwaka Kakeru Shoujo, aka The Girl Who Leapt Through Time. And she performed the theme song. And this release was the one that really kicked her, into the stratosphere, so to speak. And yeah. So she continued acting and singing throughout the 80s. She eventually left Kadokawa in 1986, and she moved to a more mature pop sound. A lot of these idols, if they keep doing music, they eventually fall into I call it ballad hell, when you become a mature singer and every song you release has to be a ballad. I don't want to say that. I don't want to say that all of them are gonna do it, or that Tomoyo Harada did that as particularly. But I just, that's typically what I mean when I say she moved to a mature pop sound. You can't see me doing air quotes. Anyways, she never took any extended hiatuses, and she's still pretty much active as an actor and singer today. And yeah, of course, we're going to talk about The Girl Who Leapt Through Time, Tokiwaka Kakeru Shoujo. This was her third single, released in April 1983, and it was a theme song of the movie for the same name. Once again, it's known as The Girl Who Leapt Through Time. It hit number 2 weekly and number 11 yearly. And it was written by Yumi Matsutoya, who's a very famous singer and songwriter in their own right. And yeah, we'll check it out here.
時
last member of the Kadokawa Saden Musume is Noiko Watanabe. Um, Honestly, I just kind of wanted to include. I don't have a lot to say about her. She's not really all that notable to the topic of today, mainly because she's kind of more the actress of the three. Like, yeah, she has some some singing and some hit singles here and there, but she's mainly the actress of the three. But yeah, anyways, she represented Kyushu in the 1981 Horror Pro Talent Scout Contest. She placed in the finals. She debuted in 1982 with the movie Iganin Poncho, which I believe is called Ninja Wars in the US. And she was in the TV drama version of Tantei Monogatari, aka Detective Story, which also has several remakes, by the way. But yeah, she pretty much all of her singles were tied to Kadokawa releases throughout the 80s. And yeah, she left Kadokawa in the early 1990s, which means she stayed there the longest out of the Sanin Musume. But she pretty much retired from music after that. Like I said, her music was clearly never meant to be her focus. But yeah, she's still active as an actress to this very day. Her debut single, it released on January 1st, 1984, and it was the theme song of the toy anime of the same name. The song is Shonen Kenya. I don't know why I didn't say that earlier. It hit number 9 weekly and number 52 yearly. And the other A-side, Hana no Iro, was the theme song for the TV drama Tantei Monogatari. We're going to play it right now. I've never seen the anime Shonen Kenya, but I just want to point out that it looks like it's aged badly. Let's just phrase it like that, and you'll see what I mean. Maybe. Okay, moving on from the Kadokawa Sanin Musume. We're talking about the biggest 80s J-pop idol. And for those who don't know, that was not Seiku Matsuda. It's Akira Nakamori. But yeah, Akira Nakamori, she was a winner of 1981 Star Tanjo. It was the third attempt, and she debuted with the single Slow Motion the following year. Real fast, Star Tanjo is an interesting show because when I was younger and getting into idols, when I say younger, I mean like I was still old, but like 10 years ago, when I was getting into idols, I remember hearing about the show Star Tanjo and thinking it operates like American Idol, whereas in people compete and there's a winner and maybe a follower up or two. But the way it works actually is several people advance towards like, the most final position, so to speak, but there'll be several people up there. And then they start working with industry people, and the industry people are like, yes, we could work with you. And they'll hire or, give people certain jobs. And then some people will never get out of that, that final position. So there's usually multiple winners. There's actually not, I wouldn't even call them winners. There's multiple people who debut from it. That's the better way to put it. Anyways, her first top 5 single came next with Shoujo A, and it kicked off a ton of hit singles that all sold over 500,000 copies. I think Second Love is her most popular one, and we'll hear that in a minute. But in 1985, she won the Grand Prix Award at the Japan Records Awards for Murame Amore. It's, French, I don't know. And and she also began a career in acting. The following year, she released a strange concept album called Fushigi, which honestly, listen to it one day, it's wild, and it's wild that it was a hit. But yeah, if you recall earlier, I mentioned that's when this is around the same time that a lot of artists are trying to get into English work. Like I mentioned, Seiko Matsuda around the same time, the mid 80s, was doing some English language releases. Well, Akira Nakamori definitely has her own English language album called Cross My Palm, which came out in 1987. But yeah, unfortunately, and whether this goes to YouTube or even when I do the panel in person, I'm going to watch my words here. At the end of the decade, she was involved in a scandal. It's terrible to call it a scandal when I tell you what it is, but yeah, she tried to unalive herself after. Well, it's very complicated, but she was dating a Johnny's idol at the time named Masahiko Kondo, aka Machi, and depending which part of this you believe or not, there was a love triangle with her and Seiko Matsuda. Who know him, her, and Seiko Matsuda? Who knows? But either way, she did try to unalive herself after they broke up, and it was a huge thing. Her career took a nosedive, and she didn't. I mean, she kept doing things afterwards. Thankfully, she survived, but she kept doing things afterwards. But it wasn't until like 1982 when she appeared in a certain drama, Sugano Mamade, that she really like recovered career wise. Yeah, and I won't go more into that, but it's worth remembering. Also, going back to what I said earlier about why I think Seiko Matsuda is more remembered as the biggest idol of the decade, is that unfortunately Akina Nakamori had that, like, on her record, so to speak. It tarnished her image, and yeah, it's unfortunate, but like that's just pretty much how it is. But yeah, anyways, forget all that. She's still active to this very day, both singing and acting. And we're gonna hear some of her songs: Shoujo A, Second Love, and Jukai 1984. And yes. じれたい一つに見えた私誰でもじれたい私は関係ないわ特別じゃないどこにもいるわ私少女へ抱き上げて時間ごと体私をさらってほしい切なさがクロスするさよならに追いかけられるの嫌よかけるさあ肩So I kind of mentioned, actually, I don't think I mentioned it earlier, but there was a name drop in the slide earlier, how I feel there's two distinct idol booms within the 80s. And Seiko Matsuda kind of kicked off the first. So this is the first idol boom, so to speak. Was it really a boom, though? And first of all, the short answer is yes, it was. But the longer answer is, technically, the boom was only truly a boom if you were Seiko Matsuda or Akina Nakamori. Because, like, there were a lot of other idols. I don't want to make it sound like only they two were, like, actually, like, topping the charts. But everyone else just kind of existed in the sidelines, kind of the way idols will always exist at the sidelines, in my opinion. There probably was an influx of solo idols with Seiko Matsuda's, the writer Seiko Matsuda's popularity. But honestly, it was pretty much just Seiko Matsuda and Akina Nakamori competing amongst each other. And you'll see the difference as we go on in this panel about what I mean by that. But yeah, there's still some interesting things to cover, like, some artists and, like, some things to note. But it's also worth mentioning, and you notice a lot in the music styles, especially. A lot of this just feels like a continuation from the 70s. A lot of the later idols will have more, like, trends that we associate with idols today, like, the cutesy, kawaii images and lyrics and songs that match that, or more specifically, like, for some of you might come for this, like there's that might have came for this, I mean to say, there's a lot of idols that will have like a very city pop sound to them, as will go on. But yeah, don't worry, we'll eventually get the second idol boom, so let's keep going. So the first idol I want to talk about in this little first idol boom, though, is Kyoko Koizumi, aka Kyon. She was the winner of the 1981 Star Tanjo season, which I believe is the same one Akina Nakamori won. So yeah, I mean, well, also won, but yeah, she debuted the next year with her the single "Watashi no Jurokusai." I suck at numbers. Anyways, she was part of the first wave of idols that followed in the wake of Seiko Matsuda. Fun fact: I think there was actually this whole idea that like when she debuted, that she had like a very similar haircut, she had a similar sound. They were both doing idol stuff, and there was a whole lot of like, oh, you're a Seiko Matsuda like clone. So like, even though they're nothing alike, but she cut her hair, moved her career to other aspects, and yeah. Anyways, her most popular period began when she released the single Nagisa no Haikara Ningyo in 1984, and it kicked off a string of #1 singles. But more importantly, this kind of started her moving into like talent activities. And in Japan, a talent is like somebody who does like other media appearances. Like they're kind of famous for being famous. They'll be on TV. They'll be a guest spot on a show. Her particularly, she was on a radio show, a very popular one, and yeah, and she also of course went into acting. But yeah, she had her biggest selling single, fun fact, in 1991, which I always think is interesting. Like even though she's kind of known as an 80s idol, her career kept going. But yeah, she never really that was still her boom period, the 80s throughout the early 90s, but she's still very much active today, even though she's far more focused on acting than singing. Also, she's in a Mario game. If you ever played All Night Nippon version of Super Mario Brothers, which was a Famicom Disk System game, she's in it. That's her in the top middle. And I remember when I first played this game, I thought it was a ROM hack, but it's not. This is an official game, and it takes levels from Mario 1 and the Japanese only Mario 2. And the song we're going to listen to from her is Yamato Nadeshiko Shichihenge. This was her 11th single, released in September 1984. It hit #1 weekly and 35 yearly. This was following her big, hit period. And the idea for the song came from an article that the songwriter read that lamented the fact of like, the current state of Yamato Nadeshiko, which is like the ideal Japanese woman, so to speak. And basically how like, women these days are needed, some sexist, insert something sexist here that the article said. And but yeah, so this is kind of a send up on that. And also it was referenced in the first volume of Martian Successor Nadeshiko, the manga, which makes sense. And yeah, we'll hear it now. 'And the next artist we're going to talk about is an interesting one, Yukiko Okada. So, she entered the entertainment industry after successfully participating in 1983 Star Tanjo. She had several unsuccessful competition entries prior to that, and she debuted with the single First Date in 1984. And this was the first of many songs written by Maria Takeuchi for her, aka Maria Takeuchi. For those who don't know, she was the person who did Plastic Love. Everyone knows Plastic Love, especially if you're watching this being here, I don't know, however this turns out. Her biggest song and the final one that released during her lifetime came in 1986 in the form of Kuchibito Network, and that was written by Seiko Matsuda and Ryuichi Sakamoto. Ryuichi Sakamoto is from YMO, Yellow Magic Orchestra, and Seiko Matsuda obviously needs no introduction. We've mentioned her like a dozen times in this panel at least. And unfortunately, she had a relatively short time in the industry, but her rise came at the perfect time. Like, she was on the tail end of the Seiko Matsuda boom, and she was still active when the quote-unquote real boom took place in the second half of the decade. And I put it's arguable, but she was definitely on the brink of like her most successful period. Like, Kuchibito Network was the #1 hit. It was her first #1 hit, and unfortunately it was her last. And that leads me to the next thing. and I'll admit, like I find this hard to talk about because I did it too. Uh, I feel like most people who are fans of Yukiko Okada are fans of her for the wrong reasons, and I'm not here to tell you whether you should like or dislike, something for whatever. But most people find out about her because of this. I'm not going to go into the full story, but she died on April 8th, 1986, and the circumstances surrounding her death are the subject of countless, examinations, like YouTube videos. And it's funny because when I first started doing idol panels, like 10 years ago, and when I stumbled across it, people knew about it. I don't want to say like I was the first one to discover it in the fandom, but it was very, very little talked about. And over the years, people keep repeating it and whatnot. And it shocked me, but now it's just like, does anyone like her music? Because a lot of people I see share her stuff. I feel like they're just doing it because it's like in a tragic way. Like, I don't know, like, I guess you still like it, but like a lot of times, and there's some outright disrespectful things I've seen in the past as well. But let's not dwell on it anymore. We'll move on. But I just wanted to point out that I did want to point out this is important for the sake of the panel discussion we're having, mainly because this will come up again, even though I won't, go into details. But yeah, listen to her music, and hopefully, I blame true crime YouTubers. Anyways, Yukiko Okada, the song we're talking about is First Date. This is her debut single. It was released in April 1984, and it was a Glico commercial song, and it hit number 20 weekly. And like I said, it was written by Maria Takeuchi. 'So yeah, check out her music. Anyways, Minako Honda. She participated in 1982 Star Tanjo, but she failed to get picked up. And she tried to join Shoujo Tai the following year, but also failed. Shoujo Tai is a trio that we're not going to talk about much in the panel, but yeah. She eventually did win the Nagasaki Kaio Festival in 1984, and she debuted the following year with the single Satsui no Vacances. And her 1986 single, 1986 no, Marilyn, which I'm not going to try to say the year in Japanese, but yeah, it drew mild controversy due to its performances. A lot of them were deemed like, too hot for TV, so to speak. And honestly, that was kind of what she's known for, which is a weird thing to say. But yeah, following a shift in musical trends, aka the band boom, which is a topic outside the scope of this panel, but TLDR, a lot of the Japanese music scene had a period where like pretty much rock bands and were taking over. This is a period that was heavily reliant, I don't know what the word is, on visual K groups, just pop bands, pop rock bands, and even some idols who would try to like capitalize on it, like Minako Honda. Minako Honda like formed a group called Minako with Wildcats, and I remember back when I was first like getting into idols, I was like, oh, this is such a cool thing. And now that I look at the grander scope of things, it pretty much killed her career. This pretty much like stopped her regular releases, and she tried to go back to solo after 2 albums with Minako with Wildcats, and it was like she couldn't really like recapture the glory from before that. And yeah, but anyways, she still pretty much released music well into the 2000s. But she kind of became more known for her stage work later on. I think she was in like a couple like original Japanese casts for some musicals. And yeah, she even had a couple religious themed releases towards the end. Fun fact, I'm a huge fan of Minako Honda. I have her complete discography on CD, including those religious releases. And when I got them, I'm like, why did I get these? I'm never going to listen to them. But anyhow, unfortunately, she passed away in 2005 after a short battle with leukemia. And the song we're talking about today is Sosote. This is her 6th single, and it released in May 1986. It hit number 3 weekly and 54 yearly. And it's notable because this song was also deemed too risque for TV, or the performances were. Now, I don't know if the clip I'm going to show is the clip I see referenced everywhere that it was like banned from TV because she was dancing on the floor, but I will say that whether it is or isn't, she is dancing on the floor in this clip. So maybe this is that risque performance. And don't expect anything crazy. This is like Elvis banned from TV because of his hips were shaking type level. But yeah. Anyway. Okay, and the last idol we're going to talk about in this little, like, first idol boom period is Yuki Saito. She was a finalist in the 1984 Toho Cinderella audition, and she won Shonen Magazine's Miss Magazine contest. Yeah. Anyway, she debuted with the single Sochugyo in 1985, but that same year she appeared in she got the lead role in the TV drama Sukuban Deka, and she performed its theme song. And yeah, that really kicked off her career. And besides that popular role song, she's best known for the 1986 single Kanashimi yo Konnichiwa, which was the theme song for the anime Maison Ikoku. Yeah, she pretty much only had sporadic releases after 1989, and she focused more on acting. She also became a lyricist and songwriter and writer, and not, as in like, prose. And both were things she dabbled in throughout the 80s. She's very much still active today in pretty much everything. But it's worth mentioning she's known for like kind of being a high profile Mormon within the Japanese entertainment industry, which, if you know anything about Mormonism, that's a thing among celebrities. And she's kind of like, that just like a lot of times if you talk about her today, they'll mention that, or it'll get mentioned. But the song we're talking about today is Shiroi Hono. This is her second single. It released in May 1985. Once again, it was the theme song for Sukuban Deka, and it hit number 5 weekly. Now, this is the first of many songs we're talking about this panel that circle around Sukuban Deka. And what's notable about this particular song is that there's a different take of it, either the single version or the album version. And the album version is pretty rare. Like, I mean, you can find it. I'm not saying it's rare as in like it's like lost media, but I mean it's rare that it's only on that release. Pretty much every version you'll hear anywhere is the single version, and this is that song. But yeah, in a future panel, I'm probably going to reorganize this whole thing and do it differently. But I want to focus one day on Sukuban Deka because everyone in this damn show is an idol. It's great. Everyone should watch it. I should say series because there was actually 2 movies as well. Anyways, some other idols of the early 80s. Like there's far more that I have time to mention here, but I just thought it was interesting to note that there's this very specific boom in 1982 specifically. There was even a couple that we just covered that, like Kyoko Koizumi, who debuted that year, and they're kind of known as the flower class in 1982. Other artists are in this little grouping are Chiemi Hori, Io Matsumoto, Hiroko Mita, Yu Hayami, Hideme Ishikawa, and several Johnny's artists. I think there's a couple of these artists in the opening montage of the panel too. You could check out there. And this period also saw several new duos. I didn't really mention this earlier, but we're going to cover this in a second. Idol groups at this time period are pretty uncommon, but duos for some reason aren't. 2 notable ones are Amin and Kilala to Ulala, and both of those are also in the intro. And the former of which, Amin, is kind of a one-hit wonder with their song Matsuwa. But yeah, it's debatable where you would cut this boom off, if you even would, because some people be like, "Oh, it's one long continuous thing." But just for the sake of the panel, 1985 is the year that changed everything as far as our discussion is concerned, and the reason is we saw the birth of the first true idol group. Now, let's talk about idol groups before 1985. I already mentioned there's a distinct lack of groups, which everyone's a soloist. Now there were groups though. I already mentioned Pink Lady. I name dropped Candies earlier, and there was a quartet, Saint Four. Usually they're duos or trios, so a quartet is very rare in this time period. So yeah. But the idea of a idol group that has a near constantly rotating lineup of members, a lot of people like to associate it with like the group Menudo, which is like a Puerto Rican group, male idol group that became popular around the same time, like the late 70s, early 80s. I'm not sure exactly when they debuted, but yeah, a lot of people point that out. I think like Sunku and a few other idol producers of later period have mentioned that influence, but I don't think that's really the case. I think let's be real here. Like Japan pre-internet 1980s, who really heard of Menudo? Unless you lived in Puerto Rico. It's more that these idol groups aren't even like groups, so to speak. A lot of times agencies just had a lot of girls like contracted, or a lot of idols I should say, because it's kind of similar, goes for the male groups as well. And rather than do a lot of soloists here or there, like you're a soloist, you're a duo, they kind of threw all their eggs in one basket, and they realized, hey, this kind of works. But because they have like a very nebulous lineup, because these are just various girls on their label, lineup changes are going to happen. But yeah, so yeah, there's a whole discussion about why idol groups kind of became the norm now, and I have my theories on that too, but that's far in the future. But let's start with the one that changed everything forever, Onyanko Club. But yeah, they originally formed as a promotion unit for the Fuji TV show Yakanyanyan. They debuted as a group with the single Sailor Fuku Oroge Senaide, which is please don't take off my sailor uniform. Yes. And in 1985, and a string of number one hits began with their third single, Jane, which is, Goodbye. And they began adding new members at a near constant rate. They ended up having 52 total, but all 52 were never in the group at one time, obviously. And yeah, and even right after they formed, they debuted new members, soloists, and subgroups like right away. They even had a male spin-off group, the Musco Club. By the Musco's kind of like Sun. And what's funny is because like you would think that would mean the main group would be Musume Club, which sounds a lot like Morning Musume, but it's Onyaku Club. But yeah, they had a full concert tour, which I haven't really talked about this, but idols having tours is very rare at this period. Usually they would just do promotional appearances, or they would do a show or two, maybe have one man live. Them traveling Japan is something like, traveling Japan as as a normal music tour is something like rock bands did or huge solo artists did, not idol groups. But yeah, and they even had a movie, Onyaku Club the movie, Crisis Ipatsu. All of that was in 1986. But yeah, they were very they burned brightly and burned out quickly, because by the end of 1986 they were already having a drop in popularity, and they debuted in 1985. So that's yeah. Onyaku Nyanyan itself would air its last episode on August 31st, 1987, and Onyaku Club would have their last concert that September. And yeah, it's probably, don't worry, we're going to talk more about them, but this is like the brief thing about the group. It's too much to describe what happened to all the members. 14 of them did reunite in 2002 to release a new single called Show Me Kigen. And the song we're going to look at from them is Sailor Fuku Oroge Senaide. This is the song that I always joke that if the video I show it subtitled, I have to raise the age rating of the panel just because of what it sings about. Yeah, you'll see. Or maybe you won't if you don't. You could probably hear a few English words in there like virgin, and you could piece the rest of it together on your own. But yeah, this is their debut single, released in July 1985. It hit number 5 weekly and 35 yearly. It was originally recorded with a 14-member lineup, and it was a surprise hit. They had a release event in Sunshine City, which is like a mall in Ikebukuro, and it had to be canceled because 4,000 people showed up, and they only estimated 400. And yeah, this is that song. 'That song gets a lot of flack for, like, its suggestive lyrics and everything like that. I don't think it's that bad. Okay, I don't think it's that bad when you compare to some of the to some more direct songs other artists were releasing. And it's also notable because that song's kind of more tongue in cheek. It's more playful. It's more of a joke. But yeah, moving on a bit. Well, what made Onyako Club so unique amongst other idol groups was that whether it created or just popularized, there were a lot of things that ended up in future idol groups that kind of got its true start here. And these include an ever fluid lineup. And saw people debut and graduate, that's a term you love, on a regular basis. And another thing is soloists and subunits that lets members shine outside of a group. Because when you have 52 members, or obviously they never had that many at once, when you have dozens of members, how do you know everyone? And so yeah, you would pick certain girls who proved to be more popular than the others, and they'd either be put into a group or they'd have some solo releases. Also, this is probably the most important in my opinion, that they had a relatively stable crew behind the scenes, especially a producer that everyone knows. This is so important. And there's a whole topic for idol fandom for another day. But one thing that's very common is you have to have a person that you can blame. And you're not going to blame the idols. You're going to blame the producer whenever things go wrong, or management. And yeah, that's important. Or you thank the producer or management when things go good. And yeah, identifying members by numbers, this is a bit less common today, but some groups like Idling did it exactly. And also this can kind of be seen as a precursor to things like colors, as in differentiating members through something besides their name. It's hard to remember 52 girls' names, but you can remember 1 through 52, or you remember blue, red, yellow, green, and so on. And yeah, and also scandals, because they pretty much debuted with a scandal. So yeah, just weeks after the debut of Yuyake and Yanyan, and before the release of the first single, the tabloid magazine Shukan Bunshun, they published photos of 6 underage Onyako Club members smoking outside their studio. 5 of those members were removed from the show and ultimately fired. Fuji TV also moved the show from they had it as a national broadcast, switched it to local, and changed its time slot. And in case you're wondering, I think the 6th member who was involved, she wasn't actually smoking. She was just in the picture with them, which is why she didn't get removed. These Moborashi no Onyako, the Phantom Kittens, they disappeared from the entertainment industry and only appeared kind of recently. I remember we did a panel in 2019, or before the pandemic, and they were still missing, so to speak. And at some point, over the next couple of years, oh look, they're back. But yeah. Anyways, Onyako Club, they exploded in popularity. Honestly, it's questionable whether it's because of the scandal or not, because now their names and everywhere. But the single came out, like I said, it was a huge hit. Sunshine City had to cancel the event, and the single sold a ton. The show was getting hit rating, and Yuyaka and Yanyan was reclaimed its national broadcast status. Now, talking about producers, we have to talk about Akimoto Yasushi. Now, Akimoto Yasushi, aka Aki P, he got his start as a lyricist in the early 80s. He wrote for artists like The Alfie, Tsuyoshi Nagabuchi, Kyoko Koizumi, Tunnels, etc. And he was a writer for the show Yakanyanyan. Eventually, he became one of their lyricists, and I think their main lyricist after a while, and eventually also became one of their producers. He was not the instigator for Onyaku Club. I don't think he might not even have been fully around when they formed properly, but his involvement was considered instrumental. Now, what's a bit more interesting about this is that he actually married one of the idols, Mamiko Takai, in number 16 of Onyaku Club in 1988. Now, this is very controversial, and some people actually will point out that this might have been the real reason Onyaku Club broke up, because there are a lot of scandals around the same time. I think this was right before, when he married this idol, this is right before the first time the Johnny scandal broke about Johnny Kitagawa. And there was a lot of talk whether these idol groups or idol training camps, idol agencies were, how do I put this, they were taking advantage of their clients, their artists, and whether or not this was, whatever it was, you can definitely say that somebody was dating an idol, because obviously it ended in marriage. And the stories that came out later on about how she was the one chasing after him, but who knows? And I want to point out, I don't want to make this sound like it was this huge dirty scandal, because they're still married to this day. So people can fall in love however they want. It was just, it's worth noting that it was just not a good look, and it could have been the reason why they broke up. This might have left him a total blip of the radar of the idol scene. He'd just be the guy who married an idol and faded off into the distance. If it wasn't for the fact that he is still became one of the biggest producers of all time. I think he kind of is. I think he has more hit singles as a lyricist than anyone else in Japan, because he eventually got involved with the biggest idol group of all time, AKB48. But that's a story for another day. Before we move on, though, I want to talk about, this will probably be the last time I mention scandal, so to speak, about this, a much bigger thing to talk about regarding scandals that took place. We already mentioned the Shukan Bunchun one, the smoking scandal, and there were tons on that level, but there were other more serious ones. I already mentioned that the Johnny Kitagawa scandal broke first. Akimoto Yasushi dating at least one of his idols, and obviously we mentioned Yukiko Okada who died. We didn't mention Yasuka Endo. She debuted musically late in her life, right before she passed away, but she was kind of more known for as being an actress. That's her in Tsukuban Deka. And obviously there was Akira Nakamori's attempt that really darkened things. It kind of became what is the idol scene if it leads to girls doing stuff like that? And I don't want to make it sound like these rates are higher than in other parts of the industry, but these are three big high profile situations that happen relatively close to each other. And and we'll talk a bit more about that at the very, very end of the panel. But that's pretty much it as far as scandals go. It's just worth noting there were a lot of them. And as you could tell, by some of the timings of them all, they kind of started around 1986 to 1989. We're talking about a 3-year period where, I guess 1985, we're talking about the smoking scandal. But a very small period where all these things were just happening within what's considered a relatively small part of, the greater scene. But moving on, let's talk about the OCEU, the Onyaku Club Extended Universe. And we're talking about some of the soloists here, starting with Sonoko Kawai, my personal favorite member of Onyaku Club. She placed second in 1983's Teens Pop Contest, which is held by CBS and Sony. And she actually was about to take the offer from She was about to take a job offer, like it's in like a job, like not idol stuff. When she was chosen to represent CBS Sony, I know it's a song, CBS Sony in the 1985 audition for Onako Club. She joined at number 12, and she was known as Ain no Shoujo, the eternally young girl. She's kind of known for that because I think she was already like 20 by the time she joined, which is, like I said, she was going to take a job. And she was the first Onako Club member who was chosen to be a soloist with the 1985 single Namida no Jasmine Love, and her biggest selling single came in 1986 with Aoi Station. She graduated from Onako Club in 1986, officially became a soloist, and her activities dropped off a bit after Onako Club themselves broke up, which is going to be like a statement I'm going to say over and over in all these slides coming up. But yeah, she mostly retired from the entertainment industry, but she very notably married Sugitoshi Goto in 1994. He was a producer and songwriter who wrote countless idol songs in the 1980s, including the song we're talking about next, Aishu no Carnival. This was her sixth single, released in 1987, and it hit number 3 weekly, once again written by her husband, her future husband, I should say. And also, I want to, just because I made a big deal about Akimoto Yasushi earlier, I want to point out that by the time Sonoko Kawai and Sugitoshi Goto married, that's the mid-90s. It's like 10 years after her debut as an idol. Either they had like the longest, relationship in secret, or more than likely, it just eventually they just got to know each other through industry. So I don't think it's the same thing at all. Just want to point that out there. But yeah, this would break a string of number 1 hits, even though it had the Onako Club like production team behind it. And also another thing worth noting is the dance move during the chorus, her arm in the air thing, which you'll see. It was mocked by the comedy duo Tunnels. It's just, I only mention that because when I see the clip, I'm like, oh god, that dance move is it's kind of silly, and then it's noted for that. Yeah. The next artist to talk about is probably like the big face of Onako Club, Erinita. She joined Onako Club as number 4, and she found herself the new face of the group following the Shukan Bunshin smoking scandal. She's known for her smile, which is like known as like the $1 million smile or something like that. And it not only like made her a fan favorite, but it also meant that she was charging a hell of a lot for endorsements. And yeah, that's her $1 million smile right there. Anyway, she debuted solely. She had a solo debut in 1986 with the song Fuyo no Opera Glass, and she had a string of number 1 hits that pretty much only dropped off when she left the group later that year. She did retire from the entertainment industry pretty early on in 1990, though she began writing lyrics under the pen name Eri. And she did take part in that 2002 reunion I mentioned earlier, and she acts. Appears in acting periodically, but she's pretty much inactive today, unfortunately. The song we're talking about, of course, is Fuyo no Opera Glass. It was her debut single, and it released on January 1st, 1986. It hit number 1 weekly and 13 yearly. And fun fact, this single caused Oricon to change what they consider a debut single, because it was setting records, because like, oh, she's a debut artist, but it's like, is she really though? She's part of like one of the hottest groups like that existed before. Like this is like a re-debut. So thanks to her, if you want to become big in Japan, if you want to have a hit debut, you better be debuting there, not just debuting solo or whatever. But yeah.
冬のオペラグラスで夜の街を覗けば恋をしてるわ後ろ顔映った冬のオペラグラスで胸の奥を覗けばいつもよりも素直な私がいた
And the next one we're going to talk about is Yukiko AY. She became number 19 in the Yaka Club after she passed an audition in Yaka Nyanyan. Um, Besides being a member of the main group, she was also part of the duo Ushiro Yubi Sasadagumi, which was a group that she had with Mamiko Takai, which is the future Miss Aki P. They were like a height challenge group. Like Yukiko AY was meant to be the short one, and Mamiko was meant to be the tall one. I wish I had a picture of them to show you. It's not that notable, but it's just that was their shtick, if you will. But yeah, she debuted as a soloist in 1987, the same year that the Ushiro Yubi Sasadagumi and Oyaka Club themselves broke up. And her career never really recovered that disbandment. She worked with Tidal well into the 90s, but like unfortunately, like a lot of these soloists, it seemed like her commercial success was tied with Oyaka Club. And she married in 1997, pretty much disappeared from the public eye. She did take part in that 2002 reunion, but other than that, that's it. The song we're going to hear is Tenshi no Bodyguard. This was their debut single. It hit number 2 weekly, dropped in March 1987. And also, I might have mentioned a few nicknames here and there. Every idol has a nickname, but hers is probably most important. Yu, by the way, because all of her 80s solo work was released under the name Yu. Also, one of her most recent, one of her last singles she released before she retired was Mo Ichido Peter Pan, which was the theme song for the Peter Pan anime from 1990. Next, we're going to talk about it's Sayuri Kokusho. She was an original member of Oyaka Club number 8. She's considered the de facto leaders due to her age. And that's actually how a lot of idol groups determine, leadership. It's how long they've been it's the oldest member who's been in the group the longest. I used to always think if they're the leader, that must mean they're the best singer or whatever. But yeah, that's usually how these things work, because that's just the way things go. But yeah, she was the third Oyaka Club member to go solo, and she did so with the single Valentine Kiss, which is one of the most overplayed songs of all time. The only thing that's more surprising than anyone who has not heard the song, if you're a fan of Japanese music, is the fact that it didn't hit number 1. She left Oyaka Club in 1987. She continued doing solo activities, though once again her career dropped off after Oyaka Club themselves disbanded. But by then she'd already moved into acting, so she kind of had a safety net. Now, she kind of still maintains a set acting career here and there. She recently got into writing, and she also rides the wave of Valentine's Kiss. I think she's released 3 or 4 updated versions, in 2012 and 2020. Every time someone else releases one, she might appear on it. More power to her. I'm not knocking that. It just, yeah. So this is Valentine's Kiss. We're going to hear it. It's a debut single. It hit number 2 weekly and 14 yearly. It won the Gold Disc Award for Best Single of the Year. This is the Valentine's Day song. I think it's worth noting that this song was originally submitted to the agency for this one songwriter's debut single. And they heard it, and I guess they were like, man, great song, but we're going to give it to an idol, which is what they did. And yeah, once again, if you've ever been in Japan during Valentine's Day, or just are a fan of Japanese anything, and you dip into any media that involves Valentine's Day, you will have heard this song. Excuse me.
甘い甘い恋のチョコあなたにあげてみても目立ちはしないから私ちょっと最後の手段で決めちゃうバレンタインデーキスバレンタインデーキスバレンタインデーキスリボンをかけてシャラララ素敵にキスシャラララ
And the last idol we're going to talk about in this little OCEU is Minayo Watanabe. She joined Onako Club in late 1985 as number 29. She the contest was also looking for somebody to join one of the radio shows, which she did. She had several conflicts with the older members of the group because she was seen as like one of the newer, younger generation members, which is weird. Once again, this group was very short-lived, and all the members were like within 5 years of each other ish. So like, this is all odd. Anyway, she had her solo debut in 1986 with the single Hitomi no Yakusoku, which itself began a string of number one hits that, of course, only lasted as long as her Onyaku Club itself did. One of her interesting things in history is that she was on a 1987 episode of Yoru no Hit Studio, and she was performing the song Too Adult, which, as you could tell by the title, had the same risque type lyrics as some other songs, and she started crying partway through the performance. And once again, this was at the time when like a lot of idol stuff was under scrutiny because, like, you know, we're in the smack dab in the middle of that scandal period that we already mentioned. And I won't repeat all the stuff again, but if you remember the years I mentioned, you'll know that some big stuff had just happened and some big stuff was going to happen right after. And it was kind of like, why is she crying? What's going on? And the official story is that a producer yelled at her during the what do you call it? The practice. They had yelled at her during the practice before show, and she was scared of messing up. She started crying when she went live, but who knows? And no, we're not going to watch that clip. She released several semi-nude photo books in the 90s, married a member of the group Hot Socks, and she has two sons who are both in the entertainment industry today. She did take part in that Onyaku Club reunion, but yeah, her two sons, I think one of them is in an exile tribe group, I should say. And the song when I hear is Girls on the Roof. I just love this song. No, it is not about anything odd. I showed this to a friend of mine when I was writing this panel, and they're like, Girls on the Roof, is that about yeah, it isn't. Anyways, it's about girls hanging out on the roof, like, you know, at school. Anyways, it's her sixth single released in November 1987. It hit number 2 weekly, and this is one of her first post Onyaku Club singles. No Onyaku Club members were like Onyaku Club production team normies were in there, and of course it ended a string of number one hits, but I still love it. But yeah, moving on, as you probably can already tell, this is the second idol boom, and I guess the obvious question is, I want to load. Yes, is this the real golden era? Yes, it is. That's a slide. Let's move on. No, just kidding. Anyways, no, but really, one of the biggest differences I mentioned is that between this boom and the early boom was that it wasn't locked just to like a handful of artists. Like everyone got in on the bigger, like, you know, Oricon pie, so to speak. Notably, Onyaku Club was the catalyst of this boom, but they were constantly overshadowed by idols within their that debuted in their wake. Like, not only like people who were riding the popularity, but even their own soloists, which is kind of interesting. And once again, it almost existed as if Onyaku Club and other idols existed just to sell themselves. And cosmetics, magazines, movies, TV shows. Yeah, that media mix thing is going well, everyone. And the first artist I want to talk about in this little, like, you know, period was Yoko Oginome. She had to start in the entertainment industry when she was a child. She debuted in 1984 with the single Mirai Kokai, Selling, which I believe was a cover, and yeah, the song Sailing. Anyway, she didn't break into the top 10 until 1985's Dancing Hero Eat You Up, and this period, like, you know, kicked off a small string of number one hits. And yeah, also, this kind of changed her image. Like, she was kind of known as the dancing queen of, like, the 80s, because Dancing Hero and so on, and a lot of the other songs would be, like, kind of like, you could easily remix as club hits. And yeah, she worked with Narada Michael Walden with her 1988 English language album, because yes, she had one of those called Virgin Love, and no, it did not. Just like all the others, see these English language albums are always odd, because they tend to not do well in Japan because they're meant to break you into other English speaking territories. But I mean, I wasn't alive then, so I was alive for that one, I guess. But I wasn't like a consumer. I was like two, but they like no one bought these albums like overseas, so they're always like failures, unfortunately. But yeah, she was still active throughout the 90s. She took a break in the early 2000s, and she gained a lot of popularity because the song Dancing Hero Eat You Up went viral in 2017. I can't remember the name, but there was some dance troupe or dance like that uploaded a dance cover of it, and it was a huge hit. Anyways, we're going to hear that song, of course, Dancing Hero Eat You Up. It was her seventh single, released in November 1985. It was supposed to be called Cinderella Boy, which is the lyrics you hear in the chorus, but they changed it to Dancing Hero for who knows why. But it's worth mentioning that this is a cover. I don't think anyone ever mentions that. This is a cover of the 1985 Angie Gold song Eat You Up. Check that song out too. It's a great song. And this song hit, Yoko Oganomi's version hit number 5 weekly and number 12 yearly. And it won several awards, including the Broadcast Music Award, Nippon TV Idol Award, and Best Idol Award.
Do you wanna dance tonight? Romantic do you wanna hold me tight? Do you wanna dance tonight? Do you wanna hold me tight?
And the next artist to talk about is Noriko Sakai. She was the winner of the 1985 Shiseido Image Girl contest, and this led to a few acting roles, but most importantly got her a spot in the group Momoko Club. And we won't really talk about Momoko Club too much, but TLDR, they were like another Onyako Club in that like an agency got all their girls together and put them into one group. Following an odd VHD release in 1986, she eventually did debut with her own music in 1987 with the single Otokonoko ni Naritai, which is like I Want to Be a Boy. Also, she's kind of, as that song title might imply, she was kind of like a tomboy type idol in some of her early releases. But yeah, she released a lot of notable works, including the Yume Boken, which is the theme song for the anime Three Musketeers, and Active Heart, which was the theme song for the OVA Aim for the Top Gunbuster. And she was very active and she was very popular. She technically, like in 1987, she won like the Best Newcomer Awards. Like she was kind of primed to take off. And I guess, she definitely had hits, but it's worth mentioning she never had a number one hit. I think part of that is because she debuted in 1987. We're talking like Onyako Club's on its last legs here. There were idols who were top of the chart still, but like those spots were getting fewer and far between. And I guess she moved into acting and started focusing on other Asian markets in the 1990s. She's active again, but she had a long break. She had a drug scandal in 2009. And for those who don't know, drug scandals are like huge in Japan. Like, don't do drugs in there because they go for you. And yeah. The song we're going to hear is Noranai Teenage. This is her third single, released in August 1987. It was a Glico commercial song and it hit number 4 weekly. And once again, this got her like some Best Newcomer Awards that year. And look, we have a duo. Wink, a duo that's made up of 2 winners of a contest from the magazine Up to Boy, Sachiko Suzuki and Shoko Aida. They debuted with the single Sugar Baby Love in 1988, but they hit it big with their third single, I Ga Tomaranai, Turn It Into Love. By the way, both of those are covers, and they were covers of popular Western pop songs. And we'll talk a bit more about I Ga Tomaranai in a minute. And the first original number one hit would be 1989 Shamashin Netagyo. And the string of hit singles, pretty much the fact that they had all these hit singles at the tail end of the 80s almost feels like it counters the idea of the Idol Ice Age. And we'll talk a bit more about what that is, but it's usually thought that after Onyoka Club broke up, that idols went into like or the Musume brought idols back. But this is all stories for a bit later on or for a whole nother panel. But yeah, their popularity did fade in the mid-90s, though, and they ultimately did disband in 1996. And they've reunited here and there, but each of them pretty much have their own solo activities, which, once again, are sporadic here and there. And the song we're going to hear is I Ga Tomaranai, Turn It Into Love. This was their third single. November 1988 was its release, and it's a cover of the Kylie Minogue song, Turn It Into Love. And it's pretty interesting because this was an album track. It was not a single, but Kylie Minogue's team saw that it became a hit single in Japan, and then they released it as a single in Japan after Wink had their popular hit. But yeah, and it was used as the theme song for the TV drama Oikake Taino. Sorry, I should really rehearse that before I do it live. Anyways, it hit number 1 weekly and number 5 yearly, and it's worth mentioning that it sold over 1 million copies and it was on the charts for a while. And that's usually credited for it being used as the theme song for a drama, which, even though you might have noticed that, like, if you come to any other panels, we talk about the big hits of the decade, almost every song was a tie-in to a drama. But a lot of idols would do, like, songs for, like, a makeup brand, for a movie, or for, like, and this is a different level of drama. We're talking about Sukuban Deka. This is like hit dramas that are meant to, like, for everyone, so to speak. So yeah, and yeah, it's just worth mentioning that, like, that's a much bigger opportunity than we've kind of seen throughout this panel. And here's the song, which is also one of my favorites, both the Kylie Minogue one and this Wink version.
きらめく星座が二人を無口にさせてく重なり合った目の甘い罠じゃ心もと止まらないもあなたにドラマ始まっているじんじんじん感じてる
And the last idol we're going to look at specifically from this period, don't worry, we're not done yet, even though I think, yeah, this panel is a little long. I'll figure that out. I'll cover that when I'm done. Anyways, it's Coco. Originally formed in 1989 via the TV show Paradise Go-Go. They were a cram school-themed idol group, which is wild to me. They began with 5 members, and they debuted with the single Equal Romance in 1989, and this would be their only single released within the 80s, so technically there's only one song that matters for this panel. But it's notable for being the first of several songs that they provide for the Ranma Half anime. And Azusa Seno, considered the ace of the group, she left in 1992 in hope of starting a solo career, which I don't think she did. The group did continue until 1994 as a 4-member group, but they broke up eventually, and they pretty much all went to solo activities to various success. But yeah, honestly, they are a very small blip on the radar as far as idols are concerned. The only reason I really mention them is that, once again, they come to define the Idol Ice Age as their career started well into when it happened, or supposedly happened. Like, they existed pretty much only within the Idol Ice Age, similar to Wink. And the song we're going to hear is Equal Romance, the debut single, released in September 1989, and it was the ending theme for the second season of Ranma Half, and it hit number 7 weekly. Even though it was eventually chosen as the ending theme for Ranma Half, it was created for Otomajuku summer campaign, which is cram school. case that gets cut off, I was trying to say that the Otomajuku summer campaign, Otomajuku is like a cram school. So yeah, anyway. Other idols of this era, I already Momoko Club, not Momoku Club, typo. Momoko Club, another idol. Oh god, there's so many typos here. Momoko Club, an idol collective based around the magazine Momoko, and they became active shortly after Onaka Club's debut, and they featured a lot of notable idols within the group, like Ayumi Shirada, Rie Hitada, and we already mentioned Sakai Noriko earlier. And other notable idols from this period that we don't have time to talk about: future Lindbergh vocalist Maki Watase, future wife of Toshi of X Japan Kaori Moriya, Kumiko Goto, Noiko Ogawa, and Chisato Moritaka. And there were two more notable idols related to the Sukeban Deka franchise that we have not covered yet. And actually, we're going to cover two more besides these two later on, but the two we're not going to talk about more in depth, like Yuma Nakamura and Yuka Onishi. And there's also the duos Pumpkin and Babe. And yeah, despite the so-called idol ice age, 1987 as a year was arguably the biggest year for idols, which is odd when you think about it. But before we talk more about the idol ice age and wrap up the whole panel, let's talk about the idol Shiteno, and aka the four heavenly idol kings. Basically, this term refers to four specific idols who excelled during the initial idol boom and even into the so-called Ice Age, basically 1985 to 1990 and beyond. And they are notable for mostly achieving their fame outside of the Onaka Club machine. You'll see why that's not totally true in a second. And for having successful careers during a time when there were relatively few idols, so to speak. And they're pretty much all active to this day to various degrees, but pretty much never really took a break, and they're pretty much, active. And the naming grouping came about in the late 80s, early 90s, even though none of the four ever appeared in anything together. And yeah, let's look at each one of them before we start wrapping this up. And the first of these is Shizuka Kudo. She was a member of the group 17 Club, and of course we've mentioned 17 Club and Miss 17 before, it's a magazine, and she eventually joined Onyaku Club in 1985 as number 11, and she was also a member of Ushirogami Hikare Tai, which is, I think, is that 4-member group that they had. And she stayed with Onyaku Club to the very end and went solo right before their final concert with Kingdom no Telepathy, and this was basically, this kicked off a series of top 10 hits, including many number ones that continued well into the 90s. And so she basically, she had a lot of Onyaku Club people like behind her still when she went solo, but she's kind of known for working with Miyuki Nakajima. And that little collaboration started with Fujitsu, and it's funny because like they've talked a lot about the collaboration because they kind of like helped each other out a lot career wise. Like Shizuka Kudo like had these amazing songs that Miyuki Nakajima wrote for her, and then Miyuki Nakajima's like kind of name was like put out there more because she's also an artist in her own right. And I remember they did it. Shizuka Kudo did an interview where she was like, "Oh, well, we never actually really met, and whenever we talk, it's like basically implying they don't get along very much." Anyway, she's still active to this day, and she also active as an actor. She's currently married to former SMAP member Takuya Kimura, and both her children are also in the entertainment industry. And the song we're going to hear today is her 5th single, released in August 1988. It was a Kanabo image song. It hit number 1 weekly and number 6 yearly. And it's one of the singles written by Miyuki Nakajima, Mugoen Iropoi. This song is considered the quintessential Kaya Kyoku, aka Showa era pop song. Like it was considered to epitomize that sound. So I don't know if you agree with that or not, but that's what it is. 話しかけてるのにペタ目で通じ合うかすかに色っぽいペタ目で通じ合うそういう中になりたいわ無言育児で一緒で無言寂しがりね The second of the idol Shiteno is Yoko Minamino. She got started in acting in 1984. It ultimately led to her getting the lead in Tsukabandeka 2 in 1985. And yes, that's a sequel TV show to Tsukabandeka. She debuted musically that same year with the single Hazukashi Sukite, but didn't make it big until the release of Rakuen no Door, which is the theme song for the first Tsukabandeka movie, which she also starred in. And her star power would mean that anything she pretty much endorsed or appeared in would be a hit for the rest of the decade. Also, Yoko Minamino is my favorite of the idol Shitenyo. Shitenyo, I'll just say. She did retire from music in 1991, only dropping a few sporadic releases since then, but she's definitely still active and acting, and she most recently appeared in the newest Kamen Rider show. And yeah, she got involved in a scandal recently, but we won't talk about that. It's not important to the panel, and I feel like I've mentioned scandals more than I intended to already. But the song we're going to hear is Rakuen no Door. It was her sixth single released in January 1987, and it was a theme song of Tsukabandeka 2. The first Tsukabandeka movie, sorry. It hit number 1 weekly and 14 yearly, and this is probably the best known song from the Tsukabandeka series. And it kicked off a series of 8 number 1 hits for Yoko Minamino.
楽園のドアから
I have a small story about that song. I used to have the Tsukabandeka DVDs. It was a box set of 2 movies, but I remember I had the DVDs, and I used to like back in the day, like the early 2000s, or mid 2000s, I should say. I used to like going to sleep, put a DVD on, just put it on repeat. But my DVD player was sometimes break the loop because I would put it on repeat. And I remember one night it went back to the menu, and it didn't leave the menu because I had turned off all my sleep timers on everything, so everything would just stay on all night. And I kept hearing a 30-second loop, which is very similar to the loop I just played right there, that played of Rakure no Door, that played during the menu of the DVD. And I was too tired to get up because I was half asleep. But that song, I heard it on loop. I make it sound like it's a bad memory, but it's actually a good memory of a simpler time when I would go to sleep fucking watching. Oh, I didn't mean to curse. I go to sleep watching random DVDs. Anyways, we have one more Tsukabandeka actress to talk about, within the Shiteno. This is Yui Asaka. She accidentally got into the entertainment industry because she won a contest that she was only hoping to get a new stereo. That was the prize, but then she won and debuted. And she debuted with the single Natsu Shoujo in 1985, Summer Girl, and her career only really got off the ground when she began starring in Tsukabandeka 3 and performed its theme song Niji no Dreamer, and that was her first number 1 hit as well. And that iteration of Tsukabandeka featured a trio of idols, a trio of starring girls, and it was the most popular show amongst them, amongst the whole run. And it even got an extension. I think all the other shows were 10 episodes. This one I want to say 20, but I think it's actually 16. It had an extension though. Anyways, she released tons of hits throughout the 80s, but the releases became a bit more sporadic by the mid-90s. And she's still active to this day, and she released her new single in 2020, but she slowed down since the 2010s, which, makes sense. You're in the entertainment industry for decades at that point. And of course, we're going to hear Niji no Dreamer, which was her 8th single. Like I said, it took a while for her to take off. Released in September 1987, and it was a theme song for Tsukabandeka 3. And it hit number 1 weekly and number 93 yearly. It's funny because I hardly ever note when numbers are that low, but I'm like, I see the song there. Anyways, there is a notable live version from 1989 concert that features her playing bass while performing. Unfortunately, I couldn't find that clip in time for this panel. Come to a future one, I'm sure I'll find it and I'll play it there. final idol of the idol Shiteno is Miho Nakayama. She got to start as a model and commercial actress, and she debuted as an actor in 1984 and as a music artist in 1985 with the single C. She has some notable roles during this time. She starred in the movie Bebop High School and in the drama series Sailor Fuku Hangyaku Dome, which is known as Sailor Suit Rebel Alliance. I think both of those are like kind of YouTube darlings. Every so often somebody will discover them and do like video essays about them. And she also provided the music for both of those. And her popularity soared after the release of 1987's Catch Me, which was her first #1 hit. And this period of like, the string of #1 hits, I should say, also includes the single Mermaid, which is like a city pop classic. Like a lot of that song gets like thrown in a lot of compilations, like, city pop after like Plastic Love took off. And it's gone viral several times in its own right. But yeah, she remained active well into the 2000s when she got married and moved to Paris. Her and her husband divorced in 2014. She moved back to Japan, and she's active in both acting and music again. She also has a Famicom game. I bought this in Japan. I remember when I was there, because I'm like, oh shit, this isn't. Why am I cursing at the end of this? Anyways, I'm like from the disc system, and it's basically I think it's a visual novel, like where like she calls. I don't really get into Japanese. I have played it. Like I do have a disc system and everything like that. But yeah. Anyways. The song we hear, of course, is Catch Me. This is her 11th single released in October 1987, and it hit #1 weekly and 38 yearly. Her first #1 hit. Worth noting, the male vocal samples that you're going to hear in the clip are from Dance Man, who had just debuted. Dance Man, you might be like, who's Dance Man? Besides like being behind like Yatta, which is like, a viral internet thing from the early 2000s. More important to the idol discussion, he's arguably the reason why Morning Musume became like as huge as they were, because he arranged like a lot of the hit songs like Love Machine, Kono Dansite, Happy Summer Wedding, even Petite Monish, Chikoto Love, and a few other songs. So yeah, and he didn't write this one, he just in the vocal samples. But just worth mentioning that like even like he had just debuted and kind of was intertwining with the idol thing. But yeah, now we're wrapping this up. Let's talk about the Idol Ice Age real fast. Basically, what ended the Idol boom? There's been a lot of talk about what brought about the so-called Idol Ice Age. And I have a 5-point list that I want to talk about why it might have taken place. First of all, the band boom in the 90s themselves. Music trends change. Trends in general change. Like I said earlier, the band boom was kicking off. Kicked off by groups like Checkers and Anzen Shitai, and later on by visual K groups like X Japan and so on. And this kind of permeated everything. Like I said, even when idols were getting popular, even when like other pop groups were getting popular, it was usually within the band format. And then the 90s, everyone, like the 90s pretty much across the board was like, new decade, we got to change things up. 4, the lack of television presence. I didn't talk about this pretty much at all, but a lot of the clips you will have seen were from shows like, Yoro no Hit Studio, the Top 10, the Best 10, and so on. And a lot of these shows would disappear by the end of the decade. And like I mentioned earlier, concert tours for idols were very rare. So where are they going to promote their music if there's no more music shows? Oddly enough, Music Station debuted, I think, in 1987. But that was pretty much the only one. So there was a lack of places for idols to be. The disbandment of Onyaku Club. Now, I feel like I glanced over them a bit in this panel and talked more about the soloists, but like they were huge. And when you come to define your movement, once you're gone, it's hard to define it's hard to like justify the rest of it still being there. And Onyaku Club was like hit so hard, so fast, went out. I mean, sure, they were declining a little, but by the time they went out, they were still like kind of on top. So It was hard for other groups to like get beyond that. And and then number two is all the idol scandals of various types. I can't downplay this enough. That, as a matter of fact, I think that's one of the issues with that book I mentioned earlier, Islands of 8 Million Smiles, and any other scholarly look at the idol thing, is that a lot of them are written by hardcore fans. Like that, the cover of the Islands of 8 Million Smiles has Hiroshi Aogi, the author, with his favorite idols on the cover. And I think a lot of them don't want to badmouth the industry, especially if you're interviewing them and working with any. You kind of can't if you want to, get official words from people. But the truth is, like, there was some shit going on in the 80s. And yeah, that's part. And a lot of people were like, let's move on to something a little more clean, even though nothing really is. And my last point, which I think is the most important, is idols are rarely ever a true commercial entity. Like, there were periods when idols took over the scene, especially now, and we'll get to that in a second. And but they always exist. They exist more to sell something, and it's almost, at times, it feels like the music is an extra bonus, a good bonus, and some people could definitely love it, but it is what it is. And then again, did Idol Ice Age really happen? Because I don't think, like, my controversial point is, I don't think it did. I just think that, like, it had a boom. I mean, let me rephrase that. Idols never stopped. There was just a period where they topped the charts. Anyways, I've argued a bit that the Idol Ice Age didn't happen, and I do feel that's the case. And one day, maybe I'll do a much longer a more overview of idols, like an idol timeline. That's actually what this panel started as, but then I got too focused on the 80s part that I just stopped there. But I think part of the reason is that there's a lot of nostalgia for this time period, like specifically for idols, but also within like the bubble economy period of Japan itself. So people look at it in a vacuum and don't realize that, like, life goes on, like, as after, like, Onyaku Club broke up, before Onyaku Club, like before Seiko Matsuda debuted, things didn't pop into existence and disappear. They just kept going and evolved. Anyways, yeah, I guess it is true that there were fewer idols in the mid 90s, and then eventually when idols did, like, come back, it was first trying to emulate Onyaku Club in the form of Morning Musume, and eventually just recreating them in AKB48. And yeah, apparently we did need Yasushi Akamoto to kick off the second idol boom. So, conclusion, I hope that everyone, learned something about 80s idols, even if just new music to add to your playlist. And honestly, if I put this on YouTube and you watch to the end, please let me know your thoughts. I would love to discuss, even argue about this, because it's a topic I love, and there's not that many, I don't get a lot of time to talk about it. Again, I'm thinking about doing a similar panel for, like, the return of idols in the late 90s, 2000s. I have tons of music panels. Honestly, part of the issue is, and I'll be real with you, everyone, is like part of the reason why I want to, that's not why I recorded this. I did record this at the time of the panel, but part of the reason I want to upload this to YouTube, and I have it in the back of my mind, is that cons in my scene, I mean, they know me. Like, I've been to a lot of conventions, like I said, 150 panels. But, like, I think that there's some cons that are just kind of humoring me. It's like, oh, it's Manuel putting in his, like, 10th version of, like, of examining J-pop again. And I will admit, some of the titles do sound similar, and it's hard to, like, make them catchy and punchy. I never do the same panel twice, though. Like, I go crazy about this. Like, this panel is definitely going to go to other conventions, and I guarantee you it's going to be rewritten. I've already have rewrites in my head. I don't want to say them in case I don't do them, and also I don't want to say them in case, like, you want to come to future panel. I want to give away what I want to talk about. But yeah, but please, if you're able to come to a panel, come to them. I think I'm going to start uploading panels as well, and that's pretty much it. That's the end of this. I don't know when I started this panel, like, as in recording, but I definitely went over time, so I'll look at that later. And if this is on YouTube, let me know. Like, comment, subscribe. Thank you for watching, and watching. See, I'm going into my podcast mode. But yeah, follow us, ADJ Connections, and check out the panel slides below if you want to. And yeah, that's it. Thank you. Well, here's a little outro, I guess. recording this, jeez, how long has it been since ALA? Well, we're in April 6th. I'm actually getting ready to write a panel for Level Up Expo, which I'm doing in depending on when this is recorded, I'm doing Level Up Expo in pretty much exactly 3 weeks, and this panel will also be done at Fanime, and I've already started. I haven't started the writing, but I collected a lot of new clips, and after doing it at ALA, I had a lot of ideas about things that didn't work. But yeah, like, comment, subscribe, and all that good stuff. Let me know what you. I didn't mention this earlier, but this is the first time this panel was written, so it's gonna have that rough feel where I definitely overwrote the panel at various points, and there are parts where how do I say this? This panel needed a rewrite, and nothing bad or good about it. I'm proud of it, and I'm proud of what we ended up doing at ALA. But it definitely needs a rewrite to just tighten things up and add more. There's a lot more I wanted to say I couldn't get out because of time, and yeah, hopefully more cons take the panels. I think I ended the other thing by saying by lamenting the fact that some cons are it's Manuel with his 10th thing again. I actually had to explain to Fanime. And Fanime is the worst because Fanime has character limits, so I can't do a subtitle that explains what the panel is. But I had to explain to Fanime how the panels were different, and please take them all. And they did. So I don't want to say anything negative about them, as in they're not willing to work with creators or whatever. But yeah, I might be doing more of these on YouTube, and I apologize for all the weird takes. I haven't listened to the other thing, and I imagine I just listened to a dry lecture. But I want to reiterate that I was literally alone in my room, just going through the slides, and it's hard to get energy up when you're doing that. It's different when you're reading a script too. None of that was scripted, and there was a few parts where I was reading the slide here or there, but most of it's just in my mind. Keep in mind, those slides are just written how I talk usually. So yeah. Anyways, like, comment, subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I think I made a new channel. Well, I didn't make a new channel. I'm just gonna put this on my personal channel, so hopefully, if it gets copyright struck, it won't happen to the A2J channel. And let me know if you want to see more of it. I don't know. I have a feeling I'm gonna do this whole edit, and by edit I mean I'm gonna just bring things together and tighten any. Because there was, you won't notice it now, but there was a part where I had to get up and leave, which is why I wasn't sure how long the last recording was. But I'm going to tighten it all up. I have a feeling I'm going to upload it and it'll get 10 views. But honestly, if it gets 10 views, that's still great. It's 10 people. Let me know what you think anyway. I don't mind. And yeah, thank you for watching. Have a great April 2024.